49ers instant reaction time, the minicamp version. Why don't we focus on the explosive Isaac Guerendo? More on him in a little bit. Practice one of 49ers veteran minicamp has wrapped up. And I'll tell you what, it's intensely dramatic at 49ers veteran minicamp this year simply because of the lack of drama. Just compare this to previous seasons. 2022, Debo Samuel's contract negotiation and wonders about whether or not he would show up to mandatory veteran minicamp. 2023, Nick Bosa. Bosa was there, didn't get fined because of it, but he didn't practice. And of course, at this time of that year, far from resolution in terms of that contract. That was all child's play, though, compared to 2024. Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, all those guys were working on new contracts last offseason. CMC actually signed his right around the time of this veteran minicamp. Trent Williams didn't sign his around this time, but he did show up for a day. He was out on the field talking with Christian McCaffrey. And of course, Brandon Ayuk, well, that whole saga was just getting started. Fast forward to now, and you see everyone out there on that practice field. Brock Purdy has looked sharp throughout all of spring. Christian McCaffrey has looked healthy throughout all of spring. Trent Williams looks like he's in the best shape of his career. He's not the youngest that he's been in his career. He's going to turn 37 next month, but he's light on his feet. That's exactly what the 49ers want to see out of somebody who's had ankle issues over the past several seasons. So Williams, he is present for these OTAs. I think that was the last remaining domino that had to fall, and it did last week when Trent did show up to the 49ers practice to wrap up OTAs. It was very, very clear that this mandatory veteran minicamp was just going to be a nice send-off into the summer. Same format for the 49ers at this practice. They go through multiple team periods, and they don't have pads on. And it's one of those things where we're going to have to wait until training camp to see this team really start to bruise, to firmly evaluate both lines of scrimmage. As I said the other day when I listed my OTA standouts, this is about passing league evaluation for the 49ers. And that means that Brock Purdy is at the center of the focus. And, you know, there's a new quarterbacks coach in the room, and every single one of these 49ers practices that I've been at this spring, I've noticed Mick Lombardi and I've heard Mick Lombardi. Brian Greasy decided to step away, spend some more time with his family. He was the perfect QB coach at the perfect time for San Francisco. They needed him to usher Brock Purdy into the league. They also had Sam Darnold to work with. And there was some QB reclamation projects and also, obviously, the MVP build of Brock Purdy coming from pick number 262 at Iowa State. And I thought that Brian Greasy, who came at it from an experiential outlook as a former quarterback himself, somebody who obviously was familiar with the Shanahans being the Denver Broncos QB. He was the successor to John Elway there. I think that he was perfect to help Brock Purdy carry over his even keel from college at Iowa State to the 49ers. Well, now San Francisco has moved to somebody who hadn't played QB in Mick Lombardi, but who has offensive coordinator experience. And, you know, this was the question I was most excited to ask of Mick Lombardi. I wanted to know, since we know exactly what Brian Greasy brought to the table that was so effective at QB coach, what would Mick bring to the table? And would Kyle Shanahan want him to bring something specific to the table? And I think the answer at the end of the day was yes. And here's the very, very detailed answer from Mick Lombardi.
You know, you're really trying to instill with the head coach's vision, the coordinator's vision. And I think that's a really a quality that you have to try and learn and what the head coach wants. And depends who the head coach is, the coordinator is what they want. And I think it doesn't matter who the players are or what the scheme is, that's what you try and ultimately do. So, you know, it was really cool for me to come in here last year and kind of watch Kyle and Clay and what they want in the passing game, what they want from the quarterback, and using those things to kind of guide me and say, hey, okay, this is the standard for this room and this system, and that's kind of how we'll go from there. So I would say that pretty much as an assistant coach is what you try and do, you know, on a daily basis.
Implementing what Kyle Shanahan, the head play caller, and what Clay Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, want. That is the primary job of Mick Lombardi, the quarterback's coach. He said it himself. The 49ers are coming at this now from a more schematic perspective. They had a players quarterbacks coach before, and Brian Greasy, somebody who was helping prepare young quarterbacks for the rigors of the job, especially the mental rigors of the job. And now I think Brock Purdy has his graduate degree in NFL QBing, and the instructor is now a guy who is coming at this from a former offensive coordinator's vantage point. He was with the 49ers staff last season, and as he just said, he got to absorb what Kyle Shanahan wanted from an X's and O's standpoint, what Clay Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator, wanted from that schematic standpoint. And after absorbing that for a year, Mick Lombardi can now apply it to that quarterback room. So out on that practice field, Mick is vocal. I never really heard Brian Greasy from the sidelines last year, but when I'm standing out on that practice field this year, I can tell you I can hear Mick Lombardi. It's a louder form of leadership, way of running the quarterback room, and it's definitely a change, but I think that it's a natural progression for the 49ers. Purdy has looked sharp. Mac Jones, it's been an up and down spring for him, but Mick did work with Mac back in New England. He was the receivers coach in New England when Mac was the quarterback there, but as we all know, it all works together. And he thinks that the work ethic of Mac Jones is very similar to that of Brock Purdy as far as the study off the field goes. And, the video that I made about Mac Jones, we talked about how difficult it is to pick up some of the nuances of this offense as a quarterback, the footwork, the timing. It's going to take a little longer for Mac Jones to develop the consistency that the 49ers need him to develop, but he's clearly the two. It's about Tanner Mordecai proving himself as the 3 to make that 53-man roster. And then they also really like Curtis Rourke, the rookie, but that might end up being a redshirt kind of year. He played last season for Indiana on a torn ACL and is not going to be medically cleared until very early in the 2025 season at the earliest. And I think if Tanner Mordecai proves himself that he should be on this 53-man roster as the number 3 quarterback, well, the smart play for the 49ers might be to slow play this with Curtis Rourke. You put him on injured reserve, and that means that you do not lose any of his contract. He stays on the same 4-year contract, as opposed to if you cut him and try to re-sign him to the practice squad, you lose the 4-year contract. So you maintain the team control. He can't come and play this year if he goes to injured reserve, but that's what the red shirt is for. And the 49ers, in the event that Tanner Mordecai does prove himself as that number 3, would have 3 competent quarterbacks. They'd be ready to go. They'd be okay with taking on a slower redshirt developmental prospect in Curtis Rourke at that most important position. Now, speaking of drama and contractual drama in past seasons, obviously we don't have any of it at the upper echelons of the 49ers pay scale this year, with everyone signed, which I think is the primary theme of this offseason. Everybody's in the building, perfect attendance, people getting to work. However, there is one piece of outstanding contractual business to take care of on the draft front. And this one is actually afflicting most of the league. 49ers draft pick Alfred Collins, second round selection, has yet to sign his contract, but he's in the same boat as 30 out of 32 other second round picks who have yet to sign their contracts. In fact, the only 2 second rounders who have signed their deals are the first 2 picks of that round: Carson Swessinger of the Browns and Jaden Higgins of the Texans. Now, the reason that there is a hiccup here, that there's a snag here, is because typically only first round draftees had their entire contracts guaranteed. The guarantees stopped with pick number 33 in the past. However, the Browns have given their linebacker Swessinger a fully guaranteed deal, and the Texans have given Jaden Higgins, the pick right after him, a fully guaranteed deal. Both of those deals worth $11.8 million and $11.7 million, respectively, fully guaranteed. So now there's a bit of a standoff. The rest of the league is wondering, well, how much of these deals do we have to guarantee for our second round picks moving down the line? Obviously, the rookie wage scale has it so that every subsequent pick in the draft has a contract that is slotted for less than the pick before it. So once we get down to the 11th pick of the second round, that's Alfred Collins. His money is down at 10.3 million. So top of the round is 11.8 million. And Alfred Collins at pick number 43 for the 49ers will sign a contract worth 10.3 million. The question is, how much of that is going to be fully guaranteed? It is slotted, according to the rookie wage scale, for a $4.1 million signing bonus. That's all that has to be guaranteed. But obviously, with the top two picks getting much more than that fully guaranteed, I think that Alfred Collins is going to wait for more of this contract to be secured. He probably is not going to sign until guys ahead of him sign. So picks number 3 through 10 of the second round, or at least a few of those picks are going to have to sign to set appropriate parameters for Alfred Collins. We're waiting for Alfred Collins to be fully healthy. He has been healing up over the course of the offseason. Remember that the calf issue that he had came from before the 49ers drafted him. I think that it goes back to his pro day at the University of Texas. But he's the 49ers defensive lineman. They drafted a lot of those guys. They added a lot of those guys this offseason whom we have yet to see in action. We have seen him standing on the sideline. The guy is an absolute behemoth. His fellow draftees, CJ West, he's also very large, although West is wide instead of tall. And Michael Williams, just like Alfred Collins, nice arm length for Michael Williams. Yeah, I mentioned it yesterday, though. Anybody trying to crown a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman at this point is getting way, way ahead of themselves. The pads aren't on at this point. These practices that the 49ers are running through, it's shorts, it's jerseys, there's no contact. So there's no real blocking. There's no real mano-a-mano battles happening at the line of scrimmage. Right now, the 49ers are just barely getting their feet wet. Again, it's more like a 7-on-7 passing league. And whenever they do move to 11-on-11, as we've seen over the course of OTAs and now here into minicamp, whenever they do move into that, a lot of times it's no helmets out there for the 49ers to ensure that they're not assessing any contact, and the offensive and defensive lines are kind of just walking through the motions while the quarterbacks throw downfield. Jordan Watkins, the receiver, has made some plays. Jawan Jennings has been an absolute monster for the 49ers. He really looks like he has just blossomed into that A-list mentality. You know, Jawan always had a very confident demeanor about him. That's why Jawan Jennings has been Jawan Jennings. But now he's taken it to the level where he expects to get the football on a down-in, down-out basis. He expects to execute his job even if he doesn't get the ball. That's where we talk about the blocking within the 49ers system. Brandon Ayuk is obviously still not practicing. And Demarcus Robinson has looked like a vet out there. He's been very impressive as well. But between Jennings and Demarcus Robinson, the 49ers have two true vet presences at that receiver position who should give them room to breathe easy at the start of this season. And if Demarcus Robinson's unavailable at the start of the season, I get it. That bumps everybody up the pecking order. So somebody like Ricky Pearsall is going to see a lot more pressure on him. There's a reason why the 49ers have been sniffing around, been interested in adding another veteran wide receiver. But when you come back to the bedrock of Jawan Jennings, boy, does that make the 49ers breathe easier. I mean, last year he was able to play X instead of Brandon Ayuk. He was able to play the Z in place of Deebo Samuel. That happened in that game where he just went off against the Rams. He's so versatile, whether it be as the third wide receiver or as the potential X, that the 49ers can sit back and also recognize that he's very, very durable. They can sit back and they can have at least some modicum of comfort at that wide receiver position. All right, on to Isaac Guerendo, because he's been flashing out of the backfield again here over the course of the 49ers offseason program. Over 500 all-purpose yards for Isaac Guerendo last season. The rushing style obviously fits into the 49ers system, and the way that he can catch the ball out of the backfield just fits like a T with what Kyle Shanahan is trying to do. And, you know, I think about adaptability and I think about the evolution of this 49ers offense. Obviously, Deebo Samuel's not out on that practice field anymore. He's with Washington. How are the 49ers going to evolve without him? Well, first off, one of the reasons that they were willing to trade Deebo Samuel's because they wanted to tailor the offense more to Brock Purdy's liking. They wanted to make sure that they had some more speed and separation ability. But the truth of the matter that Kyle Shanahan likes adaptable weapons who can line up at either receiver or at running back, guys that can really compromise a defense pre-snap. That hasn't changed. So I really think that Isaac Guerendo needs to be looked at as a potential versatile solution in the post Debo Samuel era. Mike said it the best. We were texting a little bit earlier today, and he said, it's not about taking CMC off the field. It's about getting Guerendo on it. I think that's absolutely the best way to illustrate things. Isaac Guerendo is one of those players who can coexist with Christian McCaffrey on the field. His skill set is dynamic enough for that to happen. I think that, sometimes if you throw in somebody who's a power back who, can only do one thing, you don't really trust him in the receiving game. Last year with Jordan Mason, that might have been some of the dynamic for the 49ers. It really handcuffed your ability to be as creative as you want it to be as an offense. I don't think that Isaac Guerendo handcuffs that ability for the 49ers. The guy weighs 220 pounds. So you see a lot of the highlights and you see him running around on the practice field. He looks fast and, he's young. He still has a lot of juice left in those legs. But the speed with which he plays is not usually combined with 220-pound weight. So he has the power aspect to him too. Remember that the 49ers, when they drafted this guy, all of the talk was that his measurables, his relative athletic score, held a candle to Saquon Barkley's. But Isaac Guerendo just hadn't been able to stay healthy over the course of his college career, so he was never a full-time starter. And because of that, he didn't have the chance to put the type of tape out there that would turn him into a first-round draft pick. So the 49ers got him in the 4th round, and we saw the explosiveness last year. He got his chance late in the season, and I think that it's something that the 49ers should be very, very excited about moving forward. They now have Jordan James on the roster as well, the rookie, who has, to me, looked like he's got some burst. And he definitely has some size. You've got Christian McCaffrey and Isaac Guerendo at 220, by the way. Guerendo's 220, so I'm not saying that he's small. But when you look at Jordan James run next to both of these guys, McCaffrey and Guerendo, there's a little extra width to Jordan James. He's built a little bit more like a bowling ball, the rookie out of Oregon. So I think that the 49ers can really, really have some complementary pieces working out of that backfield. And James probably reprises the Jordan Mason role. Although in an ideal world, the 49ers will get a whole heck of a lot more versatility out of that third running back role than they were able to get out of Jordan Mason, who ran tremendously well last year. But this offense truly is about that adaptability. Kyle Shanahan's day today, Robert Saleh's day tomorrow before the 49ers pack this up and send it into the offseason. This is like the last couple days of school for the 49ers. Practices are light, but practices are, I think, very good-spirited for San Francisco. This is all prelude to training camp when the practices won't be as light, when the pads are going to come on. I mean, everything is lining up right now for San Francisco to start hosting those positional battles, which really have not started yet at this point. Right now, it just is a feeling out process before the real competition begins. I think that the best battle is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be interesting to hear Robert Saleh talk about this before the offseason begins. But Nick Martin, D. Winters is not going to give up his veteran inside track as somebody who's been with the 49ers now for a couple of years all that easily to one of these newcomers. But Nick Martin will be charging hard. Chaz Surratt, can't forget about him. We know that Robert Saleh absolutely loves Chaz Surratt, the veteran. He's going to be in on that linebacker battle. So will Tatum Bethune. Can't forget about the second-year player out of Florida State. So competition there, competition in that cornerback room. Upton Stout, Trey Brown are both going to try to earn bigger time jobs for San Francisco as they figure out that nickelback cornerback rotation. And then, of course, we cannot wait until the pads come on because that's when the 49ers establish the D-line rotations under Chris Kasarik, who's still there, and now he's working with Bryce Huff and company. So energetic few weeks here at 49ers practice. Veteran minicamp is underway. Veteran minicamp is going to wrap up very soon, and then that offseason is going to be here in full force. And the reason I say full force is 49ers players, even though they might go away for 30 to 40 days, they cannot take their feet off the gas. It's going to be all about conditioning, all about preparing for what should be a fantastically entertaining and competitive training camp.